Good evening, everyone. I call to order the April 23rd, 2018 meeting of the Victoria City Council. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Doug, Council, changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
I move we adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is adopted unanimously. Open forum. Doug, any slips?
No.
Anybody in the public want to address the council? Going once, twice? Okay. Let's move on. Consent agenda. Anybody can take anything off the consent agenda, and we'll consider it immediately after considering the rest of the items. Council, staff, public, anybody want to take anything off the consent agenda? Going once? Seeing none, I move we adopt the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Next, donations.
Mr. Mayor, I move we accept donations from the following individuals. Ridgeview Medical Center for $100 for concerts in the park. Lions Tap Restaurant for $175. T-ball and coach pitch. State Farm Andrew Schultz, $250 for T-ball and coach pitch. State Farm Andrew Schultz, $250 for concerts in the park. Power of Life Chiropractic Center, $150 for concerts in the park. Cornerstone Insurance, $150 for concerts in the park. Cornerstone Insurance, $100 for movies in the park. Minnesota Valley Electric Co-op, $200 for movies in the park. Seek Eye Care, $150 for movies in the park. Hartman Communities LLC, $250 for concerts in the park. Salon Spatoria, $150, concerts in the park. Mediacom, $175 for T-ball and coach pitch. Ovation Orthodontics, $100 for T-ball and coach pitch. Signature Electric Company, $200 for T-ball and coach pitch. Bertus Funeral Homes, $150 for concerts in the park. Kerber Family Homes LLC, $250 for concerts in the park. Victoria Veterinary Care, $250 for concerts in the park, movies in the park, and T-ball and coach pitch. American Family, Dean Vieja Agency, $250, concerts in the park. Southwest Eye Care, $100, T-ball and coach pitch. J.B. Arnold, $50 for the fire department, and we thank them very much for their generosity.
Second that.
We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Real quick, we've lost the screen up here. Yep. You guys are working on it? Okay. And again, on behalf of the city, thanks to all those that donated to the various causes. The next item, new business. Ann?
Yeah.
You need a minute? We need to get this up?
That'd be great if we could. I worked really hard on a power presentation today. However, I can go if it's going to take too long.
For the public at home, the city's been experiencing problems with the internet. I don't know if this is related or is this just the system rebooting?
It's a system reboot.
All right.
It's a minor.
There we go.
No, you can. No, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I would like to present to you the 2017 Parks and Recreation Annual Report. Within your packet, you have a pretty comprehensive document that provides a lot of information on all of our parks, trails, also all of our recreation programs, and also the fitness center. So I'm going to just try to provide a little bit of a high-level synopsis for you about our annual report. This last year, we offered over 100 plus programs and also special events. Those events consisted of concerts in the park and movies in the park, Bike Connect. We offered older adult programs, youth programs, a lot of different fitness classes, and one of the bigger programs that we do offer is also pickleball. Looking back over a 3-year participation in the recreation programs, this last year peaked at 2,129 participants in our rec programs, which was over a 3-year period about a 13% increase in participants. Some of the highlight or most participants in a program include our summer playground programs, our t-ball program, and then our basketball program, which is a year-round program. Last year, we provided to the public movies in the park on 4 different occasions. We had 14 concerts in the park in conjunction with the 8 classic car events. We also partnered with Carver County and the city of Chaska to run Bike Connect again, and we had 125 participants this year or last year. And then we partnered with the city of Chanhassen on the Barnyard Boogie, which had 161 participants. One of the biggest programs that we've seen an increase in over time is pickleball. We started pickleball, I think, back in about 2012-13 with about 20 players. And last year we saw close to 3,000 people participating in pickleball, which just over the last year was about a 25% increase in participants in pickleball. And we offered over 410 hours of open pickleball in 2017. With that, we also have some pretty significant growth in the recreation center. As of the end of 2017, we had 1,302 active members, which is about a 6% increase from 2016. Our fitness classes, actually, we had nearly 8,000 participants in about 729 classes. Our walking track saw about 5,200 visitors. And our fitness rewards program, which is an insurance reimbursement program, we have 278 participants in that program as of 2017. And I thought it'd be interesting to kind of take a look back, especially in our drop-in fitness classes. Over the past 6 years, we've increased participants by about 6,000, which ends up being about a 319% increase over the past 6 years. One of the things that I thought was very interesting, too, was to coincide with our membership. We offer a variety of memberships at the Recreation Center. We offer monthly, annual. We offer packages that include fitness classes and also a daycare drop-in program. But since we've now added some fitness classes, we have seen a huge increase in the people that are now partnering or are now taking memberships that include the fitness classes. So we saw about a 222 members increase in the last 6 years, which is almost a 600% increase in those types of memberships. Some of the highlights for the parks and trail projects: we completed Wintergreen Park playground replacement in 2017. We started the Madeline Creek Park addition in 2017, and we'll complete that this year. Also, the Lions Park shelter improvements began, and hopefully we'll be finishing those up this summer. We replaced ball field fencing at Lions Park, and then we also completed a purchase with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District of Wasserman Lake Park. Just some other things that I thought were of note. We do have 25 community gardens that we rent out on an annual basis, and those are out at D-Town Park, right by the Recreation Center. We did implement a new software program last summer. We completed the swimming pool feasibility report. We began working on our comprehensive plan, and none of this would be possible actually without the partnerships and donations. There was a long list of donations that council member read tonight, and those are critical for our operation. So I would also like to make note Holly Kaufeld, who is our recreation supervisor for the city. She really does a wonderful job of organizing programs and running the recreation programs. And so I'd like to give a big shout out to her too, because it wouldn't be possible without her as well. So quick synopsis of the annual report, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge we face as far as the parks?
Parks alone, or parks?
Parks and recreation.
Parks and well, I think from as the city continues to grow, certainly the maintenance is always a struggle. We've got really 2 full-time people that work in park maintenance, and we're taking care of 32 plus parks. And we also have within those parks a lot of fields, and so there's a lot of maintenance that is required. And as we continue to grow, I see that being a challenge in trying to keep up, and especially with staffing levels. Trying to maintain a good balance with the budget, and so I see that as a challenge. As we also continue to go, I see recreation programs and actually finding staffing on a part-time basis. We're really struggling with that right now, trying to find good kids and good people that actually want to work. So if anybody out there is interested, we do have our online registration up for that too. So.
Thank you. Council?
I know we talked about it at the budgeting at the end of last year, but maybe you could just remind us what are the big projects for this year that are coming up?
We are actually working on a playground replacement at Woodland Hills Park, or at the Woodlands Park. It'll be a park replacement or a playground replacement that will include. We'll have to do some trail work around the play area as well, and we've also have a gravel trail that runs through the Woodlands neighborhood that we're going to be looking at paving that. That is really our biggest program. We're also working through the Wasserman Lake Park final design. I know that at the last Park and Rec Committee, the group spent a lot of time working on pavilion sizes and bathrooms and overlooks, and so that one will be an ongoing discussion for the next couple months, trying to nail down a final plan and cost estimates on that. And then we do have one park that has not been developed yet, Goodman Park, that we're going to be looking at this year to try to determine the best uses, and so that'll include neighborhood meetings and getting input from the neighborhood.
That's the park down by the dog leash dog.
Yeah, right off of Park Drive.
North of Park Drive.
Yep.
North of 5.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks.
Council, other
Yes,
comments?
I think the success of your fitness programs and pickleball, et cetera, is amazing the past 2 or 3 years, knowing the competition you have from Lifetime Fitness and Snap. So the fact that the community rec programs, training, the fitness particularly, can grow in double digits is really impressive. The other thing is I'm encouraged by the fact that the city now is starting to accumulate funds for trail connections, and I'm excited that we could continue to do that into the future, give you some light at the end of the tunnel for trail connections.
And one of the things, too, that I think is important, we have a really good group of fitness instructors, and they really have promoted and worked really hard to get those numbers up for the fitness classes, and it ultimately now is paying off. So,
Council, any other comments? Ann, thank you very much.
thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Next item, we'll move to item 6B. Very briefly before we start, I want to introduce Laura Chamberlain, HGKI. Do I have that right?
HKGI.
Oh, HKGI. Same consulting firm the city's using to help with the comprehensive plan, and you're helping us fill in for the community development director, correct?
Yes, helping provide interim planning services during the staff transition.
Perfect, thank you. So with that, Laura, we have a conditional, item 6B, conditional use permit, if you will.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you tonight, we have two items from the Planning Commission recommendations. The first is a conditional use permit at the address of 301 West 62nd Street for an accessory dwelling unit. Just a quick overview, the project is located at the northern border of the city off of Lake Virginia. It's a 2.33 acre lot in the R1 zoning district as well as the Shoreland district. Currently on the property, there's a single family home, a detached garage, and 3 detached sheds. Adjacent to the property are single family homes, the city of Shorewood, as mentioned, as well as a Metropolitan Council Environmental Services facility to the northwest. The applicant is proposing improvements on their site, which includes an expansion of their existing home, which will make the existing detached garage into an attached garage. That portion is not included within the CUP, but it is relevant, and as well as a detached building, which would include a 709 square foot garage and an accessory dwelling unit with 2 bedrooms, a walkout basement, 2 baths, a kitchen, and a screened porch. And that is what's being requested through the conditional use permit. The applicant is also proposing the removal of the 3 existing sheds on the property. Some considerations that the Planning Commission walked through. The definition within our city code of an accessory dwelling unit can be attached or detached to the principal single family unit, and the code does not have specific setbacks or bulk standards for accessory dwelling units. Staff read that to mean that an ADU should meet the principal single family unit setbacks, meaning the side yard setback is 20 feet in the R1 district, and it meets those setback requirements. A large consideration for this property with the accessory dwelling unit is that at 2.33 acres, the property is eligible for subdivision in the future. That's not what the current property owner is proposing with their accessory dwelling unit application. However, that's not to say that the next property owner wouldn't want to subdivide. As such, staff wanted to ensure that the location of and setbacks between the buildings would not create any issues with further future subdivisions and creating any non-conforming buildings. With those considerations, in the Shoreland District, 1 accessory structure is allowed. Detached garages are limited to 900 square feet. The garage portion of the building that's proposed is 709 square feet. The most recent submission to the city included an addition of a screened porch, which minimized the setback between the principal structure and the proposed structure from 30 feet to 20 feet. And one element that staff had recommended is that occupants of an accessory dwelling unit can be limited to guests, relatives, or key holders through conditions of the conditional use permit.
Key holders being the owners of the property?
Correct, with the idea of anyone who you would allow to have a set of keys into the main home would be the same set of keys to both houses.
Thank you.
And the Planning Commission public hearing, the applicant spoke and just clarified a few elements. The Planning Commission decided to recommend approval of the conditional use permit with some amendments to the conditions staff had presented, with the removal of the conditions regarding the, the removal of the conditions regarding who could stay or the occupancy of the accessory dwelling unit, and with some additional conditions that staff had recommended at time of the Planning Commission meeting. This evening, we, as staff, would recommend the approval of the conditional use permit. However, we have, with recommendation from our city attorney, have recommended that the condition of limiting the who may occupy the accessory dwelling unit to guests and not allowing it to be used for short-term rentals be added back into the list of conditions. There was some concern from the Planning Commission that such a condition would be difficult to enforce, and as we do not specify who can rent or own single-family uses, we shouldn't continue to do that for the accessory dwelling unit. However, as this is a conditional use, it would, if we did not have conditions laying that out, it would essentially make it a multifamily use on a single-family residential property. And so staff does recommend that addition. That is for your consideration this evening. Before you, and sorry, just to clarify, that recommended addition is not in the resolution before you. So that was added today.
Real quick, Bob, you added that provision?
Mayor and Council, as Laura was saying, as I understood it, the staff was recommending that the Planning Commission, and so it appears in the staff report that's in your packet. I guess it didn't make it through the Planning Commission for the reason that Laura explained, so it's not in the proposed resolution. So I didn't come up with it, but yes, I think that it's consistent with your zoning. Your zoning is R1 for this property. It's single-family, low-density, single-family residential. And if you were to allow a second structure that's being proposed here to be used by non-guests or non-relatives of the homeowner, you are in effect allowing a multifamily use of that property. So that would just be inconsistent with the R1 zoning. So
this basically enforces the R1 zoning.
correct, Mayor.
All right,
That's right.
thank you.
And so this evening, I have before you a recommended action of, with the resolution in your packet, a resolution approving the conditional use permit with the additional condition as recommended this evening.
Council, questions, comments?
A couple things I'll start.
Go ahead.
First of all, you mentioned that there wasn't any setback requirements in our current zoning. Is that a flaw that we should correct?
Yes, thank you for asking that. As part of the discussion from Planning Commission, they did give staff direction to put that on a number of ordinances that we would like to address in the future, hopefully sooner than later. So that staff is looking at building a priority for ordinances, what should be addressed during this time of transition and what should wait until our new staff come aboard.
And it indicates that they are going to hook up to Shorewoods. We just passed that.
Yes.
Is there a cost to the city on that?
Kara? No. No.
There's not.
There's not. Okay. Now, this appears to be a non-conforming structure, and I've had some experience in another municipality where I wanted to add on to a house that was a non-conforming structure, and that would have required a variance. This is non-conforming. We don't require a variance.
So are you talking about
It's a 10-foot side yard setback.
Yes. So that has not been reviewed by the city, as that portion of the project is not part of the conditional use permit. However, you are correct that an expansion of a nonconformity would be considered would need a variance according to your city code. However, and we don't have, there hasn't been a building permit submittal, that would be at that point.
Okay.
For that building in particular. If they are requesting an expansion. However, if they are keeping in same size and bulk, then that would be allowed.
Okay.
He's talking.
And this is allowed in R1 and shoreland, or?
The accessory dwelling
Right.
unit? Yes. Our code specifies within the shoreland that any conditional use that is permitted in the underlying zoning is permitted as long as it doesn't, as long as it meets setbacks and other shoreland specific requirements.
Mr. Mayor, Laura, are you sure it's a non-conforming? I mean, and it's permitted by conditional use, right? Which is,
So he was referring to the improvements to the
to the main
existing
house?
home and the existing detached garage.
Okay.
As it sits right now, the existing detached garage, I don't have the exact measurement, but that might meet the setbacks for a detached garage. However, once it becomes an attached garage, and that's something that planning staff will have to address at the time of building permit.
So we're just approving the detached
Accessory.
building
The new,
tonight.
yes, so,
And the house, the changes to the house will be a separate
correct,
proposal.
yes.
So the issue of variance could come up then.
That could be possible later. And planning staff will work with the applicant. It could be possible with building plans to make that into conforming to setbacks as well, which is what staff would recommend.
Okay. I have a couple questions. In terms of setback definitions, I always understood them to be from the lot line. Mm-hmm. And so if you zoom in on the piece where the setbacks are shown there, and there was some discussion about ensuring that in the event of a future subdivision, that it would still be conforming with the setbacks. Mm-hmm. So is the rear setback 10 feet then? Is that correct?
That's the side yard setback is the 20 feet. And in the R1 district, it's a cumulative of 30 feet between the two side yards with a minimum of 10. And so since the 20 feet on the north would have a 10-foot setback to the south for this unit, and then the cumulative of
There's enough room on the other
this-
side for the
correct
other
would have to also equal 30.
Okay. I also was curious if there was a change to the language, the ordinance language contemplated as a result of the discussion with respect to short-term rentals, et cetera. So I'll look forward to seeing that. In addition to the question that Councilmember Gregory had about cost for Shorewood utility connections, are there any other impacts? I mean, everybody has to sign off on it, but what are they really signing off on? Just, you don't live here, but you get to connect.
That's essentially correct. So they'll be billed by the city of Shorewood. Their Met Council SAC fee will be collected by the applicant and by the city of Shorewood. So the city's just providing sewer service to them.
Kind of a non-event. Okay, thank you.
And
then
sorry, go ahead.
one last question, and that is, so if we're approving the proposed ADU here, and is it dependent upon that other garage becoming attached?
Yes, and that is one of the conditions within, I'll have to see which one that says.
And so is that sequenced in a way, is there a time, like, within a year or first, or how does that, what's the mechanism to
Yes.
enforce that?
Sorry, so number 4 on the PowerPoint, that the building permit approval of the principal single-family dwelling where the existing detached garage becomes an attached garage, that has to be approved or concurrent with the accessory dwelling unit building permit.
Thank you. And then what does it require definition-wise for it to become attached? Does it have to have a roof structure connecting the two, or what does that require?
I think it needs to have a shared wall of some kind that meets fire and building code, and I assume a roof structure.
I saw some note about concrete. I didn't know if you could just pave the space in between and now it's considered connected, or
Oh,
if it actually
there
needs a
actually
structure.
there actually is already concrete between the two,
I see.
and so but it is considered detached at this point. So the applicant has shown that this whole area will become an interior of a house.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I had.
Has Shorewood agreed to allow them to connect?
Yes, they passed a resolution about half a month ago, I think, right before our planning commission meeting. So, and now with the resolution that was in your consent agenda, I think they're all set on that.
Is this the only one? The only house in Victoria that's going to be hooked up to Shorewood?
Kara, I'll look to you for that.
I'd have to look at the files for the other homes along 62nd Street. Some of them may already be connected to sewer. We have some other homes that are up in the northwest part of the city that are connected to Minnetrista sewer, and then the Tristan Heights neighborhood is connected to Chanhassen sewer. So it happens from time to time when you're on the border.
Before we get to the resolution, I'd like to just quickly poll the council. The changes that you said are recommended to be brought forward, the planning commission recommended to be brought forward. Do you need, Doug, and I don't know who should answer this, does the council need to do anything other than give a head nod, say yes, go ahead and let's get this?
I think the way she has the motion set in front of you, it covers what she's asking.
Right, I'm referring to changing in the ordinances to get this addressed going forward, not specific to this in front of us.
We have your direction for that.
You already have the direction you need, so you don't need anything else from the council? Okay.
I have one question before we quit.
Yep,
this. Is there a height requirement on accessory building like this?
Accessory buildings or accessory structures, such as just a standard detached garage, have a building height of 24 feet.
And this is within that?
This is within that. However, because we're addressing it at the code is not clear if we need to be using only accessory structure limitations. For instance, the 900 square foot for detached garage. This is more than that, and so that is one of the examples of elements that we would want to address with updating the ordinance so that we have specific setback and bulk standards for accessory dwelling units, whether attached or detached.
Okay, so let me understand. The accessory dwelling as proposed is within the current height requirements,
Correct.
but the attached garage may not be?
Sorry, the attached garage is part of the structure. It is within the height requirements. The building is more than the
house itself?
Yes, the entirety of the ADU is more in square footage in area. The footprint is larger than what a detached garage would be allowed, if that makes sense.
So that definitely has to be addressed on the next phase of this.
Correct.
Council, any other comments? If not, can I get the resolution up, please? I move we approve resolution, the number to be added in, a resolution approving a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit to be located at 301 West 62nd Street, Victoria, Minnesota, 55331, as submitted by George Hansen, with the additional conditions as recommended by staff this evening. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Laura, thank you.
Thank you.
And it looks like you get a second swing here.
Yes.
Laketown 11th preliminary plat, please.
Thank you. So our second item from the Planning Commission this evening is the rezoning and preliminary plat of Laketown 11th Edition. You may recognize this graphic from previous presentations. We are at the rezoning and preliminary plat stage of the process. Beyond this is the final plat and site plan approval. Laketown 11th is the final parcel left of the Laketown development, which has been developing over the last 15 years or so on the south side of Victoria. Laketown 11th, the concept plan was developed with the Laketown 9th concept, as shown here, and neighborhood meetings were held at that time. The proposed improvements, which went before the Planning Commission and public hearing, were 66 single-family lots, a rezoning from R1 and agriculture to the R2 district. No PUD is being proposed. On the graphic in front of you, it is north is to the left. Red Fox Drive being along here will become a collector street with an 8.5-foot bituminous trail along Red Fox Drive. The proposal also, includes 4 outlots, with outlot D containing a large portion of the site, which will become future developable areas. In the R2 zoning, we have bulk regulations, minimum lot sizes of 7,500 square feet. Many of the proposed lots within this development are much larger than this and more in the same size standards as the remainder of the Laketown development, which was developed under a PUD. The Planning Commission held 2 different public hearings for this development. The first public hearing was open and closed, and then Planning Commission recommended or tabled the discussion and requested that the applicant address some outstanding issues that were related to Marsh Lake Road and some concerns that staff had as far as there were, we didn't have the plans for Marsh Lake Road yet, and those elements couldn't really be accounted for. So that element was called Phase 3, now is being presented as part of a ghost plat as part of this. Temporary cul-de-sacs have been shown on the preliminary plat, and a landscaping plan was submitted, an updated one with the new submittal. Some elements that the Planning Commission considered at their public hearing, all of the issues related to the Marsh Lake Road alignment had been removed, and those were a lot of what public concerns had been brought up at the first public hearing. There are a few other elements that staff have discussed with the applicant that can be fixed or addressed by final plat. The Planning Commission, after holding the public hearing, passed a motion recommending approval of the rezoning and the preliminary plat for Laketown 11th, and with no additional conditions. This evening, staff is similarly recommending approval of the rezoning and preliminary plat with an additional condition recommended by our city attorney that the applicant shall submit title work along with the final plat submittal.
So are we being asked to approve of phase 1 and 2 of 11, and 3 is going to come at some later point in time?
Correct, yep. Or what used to be referred to as Phase 3 is not included in this preliminary plat anymore. So it is shown in the ghost plat as just to show that there is a possibility of connections further down. But the 66 lots are included in the Phase 1 and 2.
Thank you. Council?
In terms of the traffic flow here, there are no connections outside of Lake Town other than, looks like Red Fox, and maybe that's Field Drive. And I guess, is that Hackamore or whatever?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Is there a problem with good egress, having eliminated the southernmost portion of the project, which would have had an exit to Marsh Lake Road?
So that the access that was shown here in Phase 3 was one of the points of concern for the Planning Commission, as well as many of our public comments for our first public hearing. This proposed intersection was at the top of a pretty steep hill, and across the road from the access to the Schmieg Farm, where farm equipment would be coming in and out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm aware of those, but
Yes.
in lieu of the fact that you've eliminated the egress from the development, is there
Yes.
any issues related to that?
Safety issues.
Safety
Yeah.
issues?
Kara, would you like to
Sure.
talk about?
So the preliminary plat, as Laura noted, covers 2 phases. So they'll be submitting for final plat in phases. So the houses will be constructed at 2 different points in time. The first phase, what they generally had shown was this area and this location, where there will be 3 access points serving these homes. So Red Fox, Red Oak, right, Jim? That's your
Yes.
street. And then Hackmore. So these homes will have multiple points of ingress and egress, and so no concerns were noted with that. Staff did, however, note that when they submit for final plat for Phase 2, or get to the point of issuing building permits more specifically for Phase 2, that we are going to want to have a second access sorted through as they work through that process. So if you recall at maybe 1 council meeting ago, I was looking for head nods from the city council that staff could begin to look at accelerating a process to work on getting this connection completed. So by the time they're working through Phase 2 of a final plat, hopefully we know what our timing is. So the conditions are such, though, that we could limit this to 30 homes, which was the number of units in the fire code that Andrew recommended for only 1 access location.
I'm sorry, that's not Red Oak, it's Field Drive.
Field Drive.
In Phase 2, it does only have 30 units?
Phase 2 has 33. However, we've written the conditions as such that only 30 lots will be issued a building permit until such a time that a second egress
Got it.
or access is available.
Timing for Phase 2 is what, a couple of years out
Probably,
before they'd start building, that is?
I was looking at the applicant.
Please, for the record, name and position.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Paul Tabone. I'm an entitlement manager with Lennar. So at this point, we're still kind of determining the timing of it. It could be a safe bet to say we'd potentially develop Phase 1 this year, Phase 2 next year, so we're looking at 2019 potentially.
So we've got a little bit of time here to figure out the second egress point.
That's correct.
Got it.
Can you, can you go ahead 1 slide to where we were? So the language here, is that where's, there we go, thank you. So no more than 30 lots will be issued a building permit until such time as the city reviews and approves a second viable point of access. But it doesn't say anything about completing it. Does that language need to be clarified to make sure that it actually is connected and available for use?
I would look to our city attorney for
And
that.
that 30 lots, shouldn't it say phase 2?
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, if the will of the council is that there not be permitted to be 33 homes until there is a active, opened second access, I would encourage you to change or clarify that language. Yeah, I think it's a fair point.
Was
I
that,
think that's consistent with the fire chief's recommendation, correct?
Yep.
I would follow that and defer.
Mayor and Council, just to be fair, I mean, this condition that we're looking at that you have up on the screen there, condition number 5, I mean, understand that's in effect direction to planning staff and to me as city attorney about what to put into a development agreement. So there is some wiggle room there, but I would appreciate that you would give that direction here to us if you want it to be written very clearly that it must be that there is a second access point before there are 33 homes. So yes, direction to staff is what we're talking about, but make it clear.
And I raised the point because I wanted to understand, and I guess I'm not unilaterally saying anything here, but if an actual connection is what the intent is, then this doesn't say that. I just want to make sure that this is consistent with what the intent of the Planning Commission was and the staff recommendation.
and fire chief?
Yes, thank you.
So just to be clear, do we want to actually add in no more than 30 lots in phase 2 until such time as the second point of access into the development exists? Is that basically what we're saying?
I think that is
Okay.
logical.
Well, and I could see some overlap where it's, under construction or something that it's, it's imminent. Right now, they could approve it, but it could be 10 years before it was built, right? There's no end date on.
I'm fine with language. Bob, you could craft that in the agreement.
I can say it out loud right now. I'm looking at the staff report, page 205. The applicant shall enter into a development agreement with the city for this development. The development agreement will stipulate that no more than 30 lots served by a single point of access will be issued a building permit until such time as the city reviews and approves, and the developer provides for, a viable second point of access to serve this development.
And provides for means
Provides for, I
construction
think, gives us-
completed.
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, I mean, fair point. If you want it to be in existence before the building permit is issued, my language is probably a little fudgier.
Well, what does provides mean?
It means the developer has given assurances to the city in the form of a plan and security for that improvement to complete it. That's how I would interpret that language. If you want it to be the access point is opened, it is constructed and opened, then we could say, till the city reviews and approves, and the developer constructs, a viable second point of access to serve this development.
Council preference?
I prefer construction.
I prefer construction as long as that is consistent with, again, the staff's intent,
So I would just
including the fire chief.
note that you should have phase 2 in there, so we're clear that we're talking about phase 2. The reality of the situation is the final plat that they will submit will only cover phase 1, so the first development agreement will be in conformance of that, because we'll be dealing with 30 lots. So by the time we get to final plat of this next phase, we'll know what's happening with Marsh Lake Road, we'll know what the timing of those connections are, so it'll be easier to answer the question about what that timing should look like once we know more.
Well,
But
here's my concern is I don't necessarily want to say, all right, it's constructed and it's done and it's open before you can do that. But I also don't want the situation that we have now where we've got a 200-foot section of road that who knows when we're going to get it done. And we need to have a commitment. It's going to be open by this date and it needs to be known without any uncertainty. That's what I'm looking for. So does it have to be done ahead of time? I don't think so, but it has to be coincidental.
Well, and if we're only talking about phase 1 tonight, is it cleaner just to remove this thing altogether and talk about just the phase 1 conditions tonight?
So we are, within the preliminary plat, we're considering both phase 1 and 2. That's common. And when the applicant comes back with their final plat, we'll be one final plat for Phase 1 and then one final plat for Phase 2. I do also want to clarify off of the suggested language that the city attorney proposed. The applicant does not own the access to the to Marsh Lake Road.
Correct, but if they wanted to provide a viable second access to Marsh Lake Road, they could work it through here.
I see.
If Lennar decided they didn't want to wait for us, under that provision, they could begin working on a viable. They'd have to go through plating to do that, but
Okay.
Just one thought on this. I do not want to make it a policy or change the fire code, if you will, or the rules that the chief puts in place in reference to the 30 homes.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we're talking about 3 homes. I think, given the circumstances, especially with all the builders that are doing the other 30 homes, I'm wondering for this specific instance, if we've got a solid commitment, and Bob, if we could get that in an agreement where the developer is required to provide that second access and it's bonded such that if the developer doesn't perform, the city's able to without its own cost, I'd be willing to leave the language at that without it actually existing, because we're talking about only 3 homes. And I'm not a builder, but I'm assuming that when you have the builders come in, if you have to wait a little bit of time for that road to be constructed, it's hard to get them out and have them come back in just for 3 homes, or is it not that difficult?
That's correct. And I appreciate the sentiment on that. So I just want to be clear, because we're kind of kicking around a lot of ideas here. So the first phase would be whatever it is per the pre-plat, business as usual, right? We don't have to worry about a unit cap or anything like that in terms of a secondary access. So once we get to the second phase, we could submit a final plat for up to 30 home sites, is what we're talking about right now. Up to 30 home sites, and if there's not a secondary connection, we'd be denied 3. So now you're coming back and saying, well, it's only 3. Can we just allow that phase to go through as is, whether or not the connection is there?
What I'm saying,
at that point?
I would accept the 33 and issue the building permits as long as we have a guarantee that you've already made the commitment to build that second access point, and there's a certain reasonable amount of time, so it's not going to be 10 years, but maybe there's a stipulation in the agreement that within 1 year of the 33 homes being constructed, that second access is put in place.
I think we'd be able to work through something like that per the DA.
All right, so I wouldn't want to make that a standing exception for the city, but I'm trying to balance the fact that we're talking about 3 additional homes here and the safety concerns. For 3 homes, I think we can come up with something that's maybe a little bit reasonable. But
I think there might be a kind of a misunderstanding. There's a stipulation that we shouldn't allow more than 30 homes to be built until there's an egress. But, part of the original planning here was that there would be an egress to Marsh Lake Road to have good traffic flow and safe flow for the whole area. So, it's very important that so if you build 30 houses, you've got almost everything built and you haven't had to put that road in yet. So to me, it's broader than the 3 houses.
My understanding is that because Marsh Lake Road is still kind of moving around, that's what's kind of delaying the touchdown points along Marsh Lake Road to know where the roads are going to go.
But we should know that before 2019.
I would anticipate the same thing.
Right.
So
We may
I think
be-
it'll take care of itself.
I'm not willing to be the flexibility that you've got up to a year to complete it or something like that, whatever that language was. I'm not sure I'm willing to be that flexible. What I was understanding before was that there had to be some hard commitment that, the design is done, we're going to go build this, we have a commitment, we're going to go build this, it's imminent, but not some long time frame. I would hope that it would be under construction by the time you get to that point. But yet I recognize that it would be beneficial for all of us to have a little more flexibility there. So, Bob, you're kind of frowning at me. Does that make sense at all, or do I need to?
No, Mayor and Council, I'm getting the sense of where the council's at. I guess I'm just drafting this on the fly. I mean, I think that the point has been made a couple of times that back in this language, E, again on page 2 of 5 of the staff report, I think that it is right now that I've heard this. I didn't understand there would be 2 development agreements, that we're talking about 2 phases, each with its own development agreement. And given that understanding, I think the first sentence is fine, that the applicant shall enter into a development agreement with the city for this development. Then the second would be the development agreement add governing phase 2 of the development will stipulate that no more than 30 lots served by a single point of access will be issued a building permit until such time as the city reviews and approves, and the developer provides for. I'm still comfortable with that language. I think that allows flexibility, because the fact of the matter is, let's be clear, council, both the final plat for phase 2 and that development agreement that we're talking about, both of those have to come forward in front of you and be approved by you. So it's not as if this is the last bite at the apple. In fact, there are 2 more bites at that apple.
We're almost making this harder than it needs to be.
I think that's right.
And to the point that Councilmember Vogt made, though, this is as much, it's not necessarily about the 3 extra houses as it is about the 60-some houses that traffic all has to go north to get out, and it's past the elementary school and through the existing neighborhoods. And I don't think that's ever been the final intent, right, is that should drain to the south to Marsh Lake Road. And so the further we development without having a southern access route, it's not just about the fire department access, it's about the overall kind of livability for everybody who's already there.
And furthermore, I would expect this road would be problematic. If you go through the Schmiegs property, then you have one set of issues, and if you try to find an alternative exit, you have another set of issues. This is not going to be an easy project to get this road built, and that's my point is, the safety of the entire area depends on having this egress, not just the 3-house fire thing. So we need to make sure that that road is going to get there sooner rather than later.
So I think
I would just note that, I mean, Marsh Lake Road is the problem. So it's a moving target. So
Right.
They're trying to design against a road that isn't going to be in the location that it's currently in. And so when you're matching up against proposed conditions that don't exist yet, their design was just becoming really problematic because they were designing against a condition that's going to change. So hopefully within 6 months, we have designed far enough along that their design team then can design against the proposed Marsh Lake Road, and we can end up with something that's going to work a lot better for Marsh Lake Road and for the development.
Got it. So I think I heard a consensus from the council. We'll use Bob's language, and we'll limit it to just the 30 units. Any council, is that fine?
I'm fine with that, and I guess just, put a footnote in there that second phase is going to have a hard time getting approved if there isn't some concrete plan to get out south. So staff emphasis on the Marsh Lake Road project is going to be a high priority.
Okay, council, any other comments? All right, Bob, we need to, Doug, we need to adopt this ordinance? What's the process here?
That's correct.
So I move we adopt ordinance number 423, an ordinance amending section 109 of the Victoria City Code, the city official zoning ordinance by rezoning all property at PID 653-240-490 from AG Agricultural District and R1 Low Density Residential District to R2 Single Family Residential District. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. I move we adopt resolution, the number to be added, a resolution authorizing publication of ordinance number 423 by title and summary. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? That resolution passes unanimously. Thank you.
Yeah, one more.
Oh, one more, sorry. I move we approve resolution number to be added, a resolution approving the preliminary plat for a residential development to be known as Laketown 11th Edition, submitted by U.S. Home Corporation doing business as Lennar, with the additional condition as recommended by staff this evening, along with the condition added that the city attorney Vos will put on. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Oh,
Before we go, does this need to be specific to phase 1? Preliminary plat is everything?
Yes, preliminary plat is
Right.
both Phase 1 and 2.
All right, so we're good. We have a valid motion. Everybody, or all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted unanimously. Now I can say thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to getting started.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 6D. Kelly?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excuse me. Tonight I'm going to briefly touch on the city's first quarter of 2018 financial report. So the first page I'll talk about is the general fund, and that is on page 1. In terms of overall revenues, we are close to what we expected for the quarter. Our building permit revenue is just a little bit below budget, but not by a concerning amount. And then in terms of expenditures, we are trending a little bit below what we budgeted for the quarter. However, I suspect that's largely due to timing. We did hire our communications and HR manager. She started in March, so throughout the year, those expenses will gradually catch up to budget. And then also our park maintenance is a little lower than what we'd expect this time of year, and that's largely due to the weather conditions. The next page of the report shows building inspections revenue for the quarter compared to what we've budgeted, and then also for 2017. I would note that we've had 30 new home permits through March. Versus 111 budgeted for the year. So we are on track for meeting our budget for the year. However, we are quite a bit below what we had last year for new homes when we had 198 for the year. Also last year we had revenue coming in from the Victoria Flats project. So, but we're still meeting all of our budgeted projections.
Kelly, do you straight line forecast? In other words, if it's 120 for the year, you just plug in 30 per quarter, or do you try and look at the seasonality and see how that matches?
I haven't really looked at the seasonality. I like to have the prior year in there because that will sometimes show the seasonality, but for the budget itself, I don't try and plug, higher revenues in the last 3 months of summer or anything like that. But that's when we typically have our most growth in new home permits.
Thank you.
The next page of our report shows revenues and expenditures for the Victoria Recreation Center. We are right on track with revenues for the quarter. And then in terms of expenditures, we're also running lower than budget, not significantly, and I suspect much of that is due to timing. And then if you look at the bottom of the page, we have a chart showing the different revenues. And I guess I would just note that for the memberships and daily passes category, we've already taken in 56% of the revenue for the year. And that's largely due to recognizing unearned revenue that we received last year. So when people pay for an annual membership, we don't recognize all that revenue in that year. We spread it out into the following year. So that's why there's such a large amount coming in for revenue already this year. And that is typical. The next 3 pages of the report show revenues and expenses for the city's utility funds. We have a water fund, a sewer fund, and a stormwater fund. So far, all 3 of those utilities are meeting their targets for the year for revenue. With the exception of water availability charges and sewer availability charges. Those revenues will come in as final plats are approved, so like tonight with the Lake Town 11th, that's where we'll start to see some of those revenues coming in. So we are below budget, but we haven't approved any new plats yet this year. And then in terms of expenditures, for the water fund, they are significantly below budget, and I expect a lot of that is due to timing. And then we also have been fortunate we haven't had any major repairs or issues for the water fund this year. Yeah, knock on wood. For the sewer fund, our largest expense is for the Met Council sewer service charge. The city's wastewater is ultimately deposited into the Met Council interceptor, so we pay the Met Council to take care of that. So that generally makes up about 65% of our operating expense for the year. So to a large extent, our expenses are fixed for sewer. But those expenses that are more variable are trending lower than what we'd expect for the quarter. Again, I suspect a lot of that's due to timing, and then, knock on wood, we haven't had any major sewer issues this year either. So,
Timing again being related to building permits and plats, et cetera?
More that we kind of operated on a cash basis for most of the year, so we haven't necessarily paid all of our bills that were incurred in March. They got paid in April, so we're essentially a month behind for expenses.
Thanks.
For the stormwater fund, we are running a little bit behind what we thought we'd have for budgeted expenditures. I think a lot of that has to do with weather, and then we typically do more of our stormwater work later in the year also. The next page of the report highlights activity from the city's first quarter utility billing. Just a couple highlights from that. Our overall revenue for the first quarter of 2018 was about 6.3% higher than our revenue from 2017. And that's largely due to the increases we had in the sewer and stormwater rates, and then also the fact that we've had so many new homes in 2017. Those are starting to come online as well. For the city's receivables, as of April 12th, we had about 11% outstanding from the January 2018 billing, and that compares pretty closely to what we've experienced in the past. Last year, our collectibles rate was about 12.5%, so we're doing a little bit better on that standpoint. In looking at the water pumped versus billed for the quarter, we were showing about 11% unbilled for the quarter, and we are attributing that to reading our meters 1 week early. This last quarter, we did that because we were having some software glitches, and we wanted to get those done when we could.
So we expect to see that made up in the next quarter billing?
Should be made up in the next quarter, yes.
So you don't think there's big leaks in the system?
No. And then the other thing I wanted to mention on this was the city's appliance rebate program. The city budgets for $5,000 annually for residents to replace toilets, faucets, dishwashers, and clothes washers. And they can, if they get certain brands, it's escaping me right now what the brand is for the dishwashers, but there's two different things. There's information on the city's website, so just to make residents aware that we still are offering that program, and we do have funds available for 2018.
I have a question. Past due?
Yep.
It's about 11% of the billings through 90 days, and then 120 days plus is almost nothing. What's going on there?
That reflects the roll-off we did for balances certified to the county.
Okay.
So that really
So it's
cleans
going
up.
to the county.
Yep.
Is 11% normal?
That is for this particular quarter. It'll fluctuate throughout the year, but last year it was 12.5% for the same quarter.
So 12.5% of the citizens don't pay their utility bills.
Yes,
Wow.
At least on time.
on time. Ultimately, they'll pay through the certification process. And we don't shut off water, so I think we probably have a little bit of a higher rate for delinquencies because there's, we're not using that as a remedy.
So when it's certified, if the property changes hands, that has to be, that debt has to be cleared at the point where the deed changes hands. Is that correct?
Yes, typically the title companies will contact us for any outstanding utility balances as well as any special assessments that are out there. Every great once in a while, a property does change hands, and that has not been checked or vetted, but I would say 99% of the time that's taken care of at the time the property is sold.
Is that 11, 12%? Is that, what's the norm? I mean, is that normal?
It is. We have a pretty high rate of repeat customers that don't pay on time. So,
But, Mr. Mayor, but Kelly, we actually charge a penalty if we have to send it to the county for collection, so we actually make more money by doing it that way. I mean,
yeah,
they
we charge
pay
a
a pretty heavy
certification
penalty.
fee. We also charge a 10% per quarter late fee on the balance. So there's a pretty steep penalty to letting your balance become delinquent and not pay it.
Do those generally get caught up eventually, or how does it usually get resolved? I mean,
A lot of times it's just through the certification to taxes. And so they get certified to the following year's property taxes, and then when the county sends out their property tax bill, there's another line item for their delinquent utility bill, and it gets paid with their taxes.
got it. Thank you.
Okay, so then we will move on to cash balances for the quarter. And as is typical, we've seen a reduction. For this particular quarter, it was $2.5 million, and that's largely due to we're not going to see our first half property taxes. We get a portion in June and the balance in July. So a lot of these funds, the balance has gone down, but that's to be expected, and I don't see anything noteworthy with the balances we do have. The next page of the report goes over the city's cash and investments and some of the metrics we have. I'll just kind of note the different policies we have and note our compliance with those. So for the investment types we have limits on how much we can have in U.S. agency securities and state bonds. And you'll note that we are within our policy limits for both of those. We also have a concentration limit where we don't want to have everything or a large percentage of our assets investment in any one security. So I'd note that we have a Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation security that is equal to about 4.5% of our portfolio. Our limit is 7%. We also have limits on the overall maturities of our investments. We tend to keep them on the shorter side, and then we have a limit on what can be invested over a 3-year range. So our policy limit is 30% for those investments. We're currently at 20%. We also have a policy that we want to keep 15% of our assets current. That is, we'd be able to access that cash if we needed to in the event of an emergency or just for overall cash flow. So right now we've got just over $3.5 million in current, and a large portion of that is for unspent bond proceeds we have. We have some funds from the undergrounding project. We have some money from the 2017 street project. So those are in a money market account right now. In terms of interest rates, they are starting to creep up a little bit now, so we're starting to earn a little bit more. So as we reinvest, we should start to see our yields go up for that. We are meeting our budget for the year. And it's important to remember for the city, when we're investing, we really have three key priorities: safety, liquidity, and yield, and in that order. So when we invest, our primary concern is safety, which generally means that we're not going to earn that much. So
What's these leftover balances? I mean, they're in money market, which means they're maybe getting, what, 1/4 or 0.5%, and we're paying 2.5% on them. How do we clear those balances and apply them to something, or so we stop paying interest on them? It's not, if the project is done and there's leftover money, how do we clear that positively?
Yeah, in these cases, the projects aren't done yet, so we do expect to pay for them this year. If we do have any money left over after a project, it typically will go into the debt service fund for that particular bond issue, and then we can invest in a CD or other things as we know, how long we're going to can invest that money or how soon we might need it. And then what's really nice is the money market that we have these bond proceeds currently investing in, they're earning over 1% right now. So they are earning a pretty good rate of return. We do keep them in a segregated account just to make sure that we can meet all of the bond compliance regulations.
Okay, thank you.
The next report shows the status of the city's capital improvement plan items. And for the most part, the projects that we've spent money on are projects that have been ongoing. We haven't started a lot of the new projects for the year. We do have 3 current street projects going on. The 2018 street reclaim project, which is we expect to get started on pretty quickly here. The Steger Lake Lane East project, that is currently in the bidding process. Ads for bids went out. And then the 2017 street reclaim project, we just have a small portion of that left, so that should be done probably at the beginning of this summer, midsummer. And then there's just a couple other projects on here that are underway. And then the final page of the report shows the city's bonds outstanding as of the beginning of the year and the end of the quarter. We typically make a lot of our payments in February of each year, particularly the principal on those bond payments. So we've already paid $1.775 in principal on our bonds this year. I would note that not all of the bonds that are listed here are supported by taxes. If you look at the category for the general obligation special assessment bonds, those are supported by taxes, but they're also supported by special assessments. A rough guess on that would be about 60% of the debt service on those is paid from the general debt levy. The lease revenue bonds we have listed are fully paid by tax revenues, and then the tax increment bonds are supported by tax increment revenue and not the property tax levy. The water revenue bonds are supported fully by water revenue sources. And then way up at the top, you'll see the geo tax abatement bonds, and that's a split bond issue. Part of that was for the refunding of the recreation center bonds, and then the other portion of that was for the undergrounding. So neither one of those is supported by tax revenues. So if you look at the total debt service the city is going to have for the year, we expect to pay $2.6 million in principal this year and $640,000 in interest for the year. So about $3.25 million for the year in debt service.
So if I followed you, in terms of total bonds outstanding of that 26 million, the 11 or 12 million is supported by the tax levy. Is that-
On the special assessment side, it's about 11.9 million.
Okay.
And then if you add in the revenue bonds, that's another roughly 2.7. So about 14.6 million of the bonds is supported by some portion is being repaid by the tax levy.
Love the trend line here. Is that spike in 2016 just the timing of the refunding?
Yes. In 2016, we refunded 3 bonds. We refunded the rec center bonds, and that was $4.76 million. And then we refunded our 2009 and 2010 street improvement bonds, and those were $2.62 million. So
$7.5 million of that debt that's shown there, we actually had the cash
yes.
sitting on our balance sheet. So we had cash for $7 million, and we had debt, so we overstated our debt.
Yeah, the accounting rules require us to, when we refund something and that it hasn't officially been refunded, we have to put both sets of the bonds on there
Right, but
until the
from
call
a-
date occurs.
From a practicality standpoint, that graph, there should be a line straight through the bottom of that mountain there. So it'd be a trend line that would continue going down.
Yes,
Counting rules
I
are
would agree
counting
with you.
rules. But you're right, if you showed the expense and the debt on both,
Yes.
Yeah,
it would be net zero.
that's what we probably should do, but county rules, yes.
So, and then one final note on this, on the chart is it does show the purple section is proposed debt that we would add throughout the years. And I have included all of the street projects that we have either committed to or identified as possibilities. So Marsh Lake Road is in there, Rolling Acres Road is in there, the 13.5 acres improvements is in there.
How about Wasserman Lake Park?
I don't have anything in there for Wasserman Lake Park. I don't have any park-related bonds in there. I do have the Public Works expansion in there and the fire department build-out. So,
So it's still going down with all that.
yes, still going down. So with that, that's what I have for the report. The Finance Committee did review it at their meeting last week, so.
Council, comments, questions?
I guess one last comment on this is that I think it's always useful to see debt on a per capita basis, as a line on top of that chart.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, Kelly. Doug, correspondence?
Mr. Mayor, a couple things. I have nothing on our correspondence, but I do have communications.
Yep, please go ahead.
Planning Commission, we've talked a little bit about it, but in 2016, there were 12 meetings held. 7 of them had one Planning Commission member missing. In 2017, we had 15 meetings, and at none of those meetings did we have everybody present, and at 2 of the meetings, we had 3 people missing. So the idea that we talked to the Planning Commission last week on was, should we bring on some alternate Planning Commission members, maybe from the pool that we interviewed. We had some very good other applicants we were not able to appoint. In talking to the Planning Commission, they were very much in favor of that, and they were suggesting to the council that you should look at doing that. The idea would be that those alternate members could come to the Planning Commission meetings, probably sit at these front tables, and be aware of what's going on, and if a member wasn't present, they would take that chair. So you have a member that's already planned and ready to go, and if somebody would retire from the Planning Commission during the term, you could put an alternate right in there, so you'd never have a gap of people, and you'd always have a full Planning Commission at each meeting. So I'd like to have the council let me know if you want to do that. if you do, we could bring it back to the next meeting. We could poll the people that applied for the planning commission seats and see if they would be interested. We think they all are. In addition, we have two other people, one person you didn't interview last time, and one other person who has applied since the last time. So potentially you may want to interview those two people or not, but that's the direction I need. What would you like to do? Would you like to entertain this? Would you like to interview the two that you haven't talked to? Or what would you like to do?
So is it the same people that are missing? When you look at the people that don't show up for the planning commission meetings?
Help me out.
Sometimes I didn't, there were 5 that one of the planning commission members had missed.
There were 5 that missed at least.
5 times one person missed.
So
One of them missed 5 times, but probably most of them missed at least once, I would.
Didn't we just add 2 people to the planning commission 2 years ago?
We did.
And so before that, it was 5 people. And I was on the planning commission for 7 years, and we had 5 people, and we rarely had anyone missing. So what's happening? Do we know?
I would just
Sometimes when you hire busy people, they're busy.
right. But if we have a situation, for example, the one individual that missed 5 meetings, okay, they're busy or something's come up or a job change, who knows? We had 7 candidates here that were willing to serve. If I remember right, one of the lady candidates said she's just stopped working to take care of her kids. She was available all the time. I would suggest, instead of putting alternates on there, find the candidates that are willing to serve, that don't have conflicts, can make the meetings, and we just ask the ones that are having trouble making the meetings, replace them with somebody that can make the meetings. If that doesn't work, or if it's simply because of scheduling, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to considering alternates, but I would think the first thing we need to do, if we've got 7 people, even if one's missing, you've still got a quorum. But if we have a pattern of activity where somebody can't, well, we've got other people that want to serve. Let the other people serve.
Mr. Barrow, okay, I don't think you have anything in your ordinance that says if somebody misses so many meetings for the planning commission that they're off. You do for Park and Rec for some reason. But, so you may want to come up with some kind of a policy if you're going to do that. But, people also miss meetings because they're sick or,
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great that we have all these people that want to serve. I think that's wonderful. And to Councilmember Vogt's point, we added 2 just to make sure that we always had a quorum. And it seems like we almost had a reverse effect there because there's so many people on there. People feel that, well, nobody's going to miss me if I'm gone. And if 2 or 3 are doing that all the time, then it creates a problem. So if we've got people that are willing to serve, I think we need to encourage the members that if they want to be on the commission, part of the obligation is to be here. And if you can't make it, maybe, just voluntarily to step down.
Councilmember Striegel?
Yeah, I think I like your recommendations, City Manager, and I would think that, kind of some blend in the middle, that if there is somebody who is circumstances have changed and they're not able to attend on a regular basis, that they'd be given at least some opportunity to correct or explain, and maybe like say voluntarily step aside if that's going to continue. But I like the idea of having alternates in the queue so that we can continue with business, and even if you have one person missing out of 7, you still end up with a potential for 3-3 votes and other things that even though you get people showing up, you may not get decisions made. So I think it's good to have a good bench.
I would recommend having 2 alternates.
Have we ever had a situation where the planning commission couldn't act because they didn't have a quorum or they were a split vote?
I don't think we have anybody here that knows the answer to that question. I have not heard that.
I've seen meetings canceled before. Is that my assumption is that's always been because there's no
Since
business.
I've been here, we've canceled them because we didn't have the business or we
Right.
didn't have the staff to handle the business.
I'm just I'm questioning what's happening, but given that the reality is that they're having trouble, I can live with having alternates.
One concern with alternates, I've been to a number of meetings, and the participation level isn't always high for everybody. There's a couple people that dominate the conversation, and then the rest aren't participating all that much. And my concern is if we have 6 people up here, 2 alternates, how much participation are we going to get? How much extra participation are we going to get because we have 2 people that are willing to sit there and not really participate, but just be on call? I'm not sure that's going to solve our problem.
If they alternates regularly came to the meeting, they would be able to step into the chair. The theory would be and participate. I mean, it depends on their personality, of course, but I mean.
So
What's
go ahead.
the practice at other cities? Is that normal to have an alternate selection, or?
I've seen cities both ways. I've served as an alternate in the city I live in, and for about a half a year, and then moved up in it. And I think Cindy was on an alternate in other cities. So it does happen. It does work.
Have you, by any chance, did you talk to any of the candidates that came before the council just not long ago and ask them about this idea? Would anybody be interested in that?
Cindy did talk to them, and I think almost all of them are interested in serving.
All right, so it sounds like there may be a consensus, or at least a majority on the council, that would support the alternate concept. Do we need to bring this up as since it's in your communications, do we need to bring this up at a council meeting and vote on it? Or?
What I would suggest, I'd just put it on the next agenda, and but how do you want to proceed? Do you want to interview the 2 that you haven't talked to, or you just want to deal with the ones that you have? The one that originally applied could not make that meeting, so you haven't seen her. And then we have one other person. Do you want to interview them or not?
Well, I think we should give them the opportunity, council. Would you agree?
I would like to interview the 2 that didn't attend, especially, there was one lady that went to the trouble. She was the only one that called us.
Yep.
And she could not attend. I'd like to give her an opportunity to interview.
Okay, so we'll put that on the next meeting, and we'll invite those 2 to interview, and we'll give you the guidelines, because we want to set up some guidelines of the alternate. You'd have to have an alternate 1 and 2, so that if both of them were there, and there was only 1 seat up here, that 1 would move up, so we wouldn't have that problem. And then the dilemma of whether they would participate or not, and our thought is that they would not participate unless they had a seat up here. They'd probably be sitting at one of these tables. So we'll give you that information when you look at it next time, and then we can interview, and then you can go ahead and vote. And we'll give you the resumes of the other people that you already talked to also. So
All right, thank you. Mr. Vos, my assumption based on what Doug said is there's no issue with this from a legal perspective of having alternates. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any limitation on having an alternate system.
Perfect. Okay. So, Doug, you'll put that on a council meeting coming up?
I will.
And
Okay.
if I could, I'd like to see, again, to articulate the mechanics of exactly what you said, but also change or make some proposal to the language that talks about if there are repetitive absences, how do we want to deal with that in a sort of a systemic way?
Bring something. You can do that at the same time. Okay.
Thank you.
Bob, report?
Mayor, no, thank you.
I've got some more.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Go ahead.
We just want to touch base with you real quickly on summer hours. We're about to go on summer hours. They will start. Did I put that on here? No, yeah, I did.
May 21st.
So they'll start May 21st and end August 31st. That gives a long weekend for Memorial Day and a long weekend for Labor Day. What we're talking about is starting earlier, starting at 7:30, going to 4:30, and then on Fridays we would go from 7:30 to noon. The bottom line is that there will be 2 hours less that City Hall will be open in the summertime versus the wintertime. The employees will actually work the same number of hours because they will take a shorter lunch break. It'll be a half-hour lunch break. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. That Friday afternoon is not a big time for anybody coming to City Hall in the summertime. So, and I think 7:30 would help some of the people that are in the contracting business get going earlier in the morning as they like to do. So I'm just telling you that that's the hours that we are going to go to starting May 21st.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Doug?
I do.
Okay.
Just for information, the Lake Water Quality Committee met this week, and maybe you're going to report on that in your report, Mayor. And they've set another meeting for May 17th, I believe. So that committee is off and running. Our compost site was going to start today, I think, but it's a little muddy down there because we had a little bit of snow. So we just want everybody to know that we're going to start that by Saturday. A little bit later than what we'd hoped, but in my yard you couldn't rake leaves very much long ago anyway, so it's I think it'll work out for everybody. But we just wanted to tell the public we're going to open on Saturday. And lastly, I want to ask Kara to do a quick run-up on the comp plan, just to give an update on where we're at on that.
Mayor and Council, we're just going to provide you with a quick schedule update because the comprehensive plan is going to start moving quickly through various committees, commissions, and City Council. So this update was shared with the Planning Commission at their last meeting. The drafting of the actual text document is nearly complete. We're expecting to get a full draft submitted to us this week. We'll then submit that full draft language to the steering committee. We're also going to send it to the City Council and Planning Commission at the same time. It's a fairly lengthy document, so we want to at least get it in everybody's hands sooner than later. So you have some time to read it in great detail. On May 2nd, the steering committee will be reviewing the draft document in detail. The Planning Commission will review it on the 15th. Park and Rec on the 21st, and then we're expecting that the document will be in front of the City Council on May 29th. Now, what you're asked to do on the 29th would be to authorize distribution to the affected agencies and jurisdictions. So you aren't approving the document, you are just approving its release to the adjoining cities and the various agencies that have to review our draft so that they can all provide comments on our document. There is a 6-month review period allowed for the affected agencies. I'm told by the planners that they won't necessarily take that full 6-month review. Typically, people are anxious to get our review comments back when we're reviewing theirs, so the courtesy tends to extend both ways for people to review those sooner than later. HKGI expects that additional meetings may be held with the steering committee during the review period, and then in that August to September timeframe, our consultant would begin assembling all the comments that were received from various jurisdictions. I will note that during that 6-month review period, a draft is also provided to Met Council, so they can complete an informal review and flag any issues they might see with what we submitted. After those comments have been assembled and the steering committee's reviewed them and addressed or advised of any needs or changes to the document, the Planning Commission would hold a public hearing, and then the City Council would be asked to authorize formal submittal to the Met Council. You can't actually approve the plan until the Met Council has signed off on it, but that authorization of submittal means you think it's ready to be approved by the Met Council. They have a set period of time that they get to take in order to officially review your document, and then the City Council would be expected to be in a position for final approval in the beginning of 2019. So those are the steps that are coming next. I would note that Brad Scheib with HKGI has offered to meet with City Council members between now and the 29th in the event that people wish to have some one-on-one conversation with our consultant about the comp plan, and Doug, of course, would be the person coordinating that.
Thank you. Doug Moore?
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Bob?
Still nothing to say, Mayor.
Councilmember Crowley?
Nothing to say.
Councilmember Striegel?
Just one comment about the sheriff's report, and I think it was probably about a year ago at this time we added additional coverage, maybe not even that long ago, and connected with that was a lot of outreach type of activity, and I guess I think it would be good for the citizens to see what kind of outreach activities are taking place in addition to just the enforcement activities. So if that could be added to a future sheriff's report, I think it would be welcomed.
Doug, could you pass it along? All right. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Yep. Councilmember Vogt.
I was curious about what was happening with Southwest Prime, our service that we have in the city of Victoria from Southwest. And I found out that through the first 3 months of this year, 215 people from Victoria have used Southwest Prime. So the takeaway I'm getting is people are using it, but we need to enhance awareness through whatever means to increase that use. So,
Mr. Mayor, we've talked about that a little bit with Gwen, and we'll try to put some more on the web and do whatever we can. It's a pretty good service, and we'll make sure everybody knows about it.
Doug, I haven't seen a copy of that report. Could you get that distributed to the full council?
Sure.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogt, anything else?
nope.
Councilmember Gregory?
No report.
Just something very quickly, as Doug mentioned, the Water Quality Committee met. We didn't have a recording device, but we didn't really take care of business. We talked about the general concept. I relayed my recollection of what the council approved. The primary objective that I told them was we wanted that committee to come up with a charter that they would bring back to the whole council for the whole council to review and approve. A couple of quick highlights. There are a number of asks that they had that I passed to Doug. Updated contact information. They're going to come up with another name for the committee and some suggestions. What I told them is go ahead and put that together. They also asked for some templates. I said go ahead and put that together and work with staff. And when they have something, to bring it back to the council for the full council to review. The other thing is we'll get the mechanics worked out so that the next meeting there will be recording devices, and all of these meetings will be recorded so they're available for everybody in Victoria. And that's all I have. So if there's no questions, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.